Taoism not going for it, none of the predictions offense applies to Anthro. We'll concede that the consequences come first. Issues value utilitarianism means that if we win what's to be valued, we will win the spate conditionality will be in the one in our now the Anthro debate proper. The bottom card of the 1NC isn't answered. This is pretty important because in a utilitarian debate, the question is begged what we should value. There is no distinction between the value of humans and the value of non-humans. Even if anthropocentrism is okay, biocentrism is not. What is it about humans that makes us superior to other forms of life, or life that makes it for us better than other forms of bound life? Are we smarter? If being smarter means that we're able to kill or torture other things, does that give Albert Einstein the right to kill and torture other humans? Will, if we were so much smarter, should we be smarter enough to value the suffering of others as we do ourselves? Because all suffering is made equal as the bearer of suffering feels the same. There is the creation. What about life is special? There's the creation of organization from nothing and the allowing of reproduction. But doesn't that make viruses, life forms by not having any cells, cyclones, create organization from nothing and reproduce? They even breathe, acting as lungs that vacillate back and forth across waves and water and time. Where they're unique enough that we even give names to those things in hurricanes, which would make them no different from life itself. When you acknowledge that the distinction between life and non-life, between human and non-human is just, well, it's arbitrary. It's only, well, I know it when I see it. That allows all forms of oppression. Black people are inferior to whites because, well, I know it when I see it. They're just so make the proof of value to why these things are important. Now the framework, our interpretations, we get the right to challenge the ethics of the 1AC, and they can the affirmative ultimately weigh their case when they justify the ethical reasoning behind it. There's a few net benefits. First, fairness, they can link 90% of the 1AC over a plan text. They can link nothing, next flex. First, advocates first and last speech, the ability to frame the debate. There's no impact. Two, alternative framers, policy arguments linked to this as well. B-point education critiques are critical in understanding how ESG policy making in the first place, their function excluding case terms, and advocates for change and cost-benefit analysis that are more conducive to politics than a hyper-inflated internal link chain, and their framework is a link human concentric knowledge production relies on imagined distinction that attract from view from what everything is. Montori 95, the right to linear perspective created a cultural context for the turn towards scientific abstractism. Knowledge of nature could be discerned through accurate representation of objects, mounts to spectator. Epistemology, which purportedly involves unmediated seeing of passive mirroring of reality, obtaining true knowledge of natural laws, depends on adequate methods that can accurately measure the primary characteristics of nature. Behind the lens of the camera, certain habit of mind is also formed to detach this mighty neutral observer, and the role of the judge is that of a mountain. By opening ourselves to new ways of being away from anthropocentrism allows for critical understanding the branch and new forms of consciousness outweighs their education predictability arguments. Seed 98, when humans investigate see through the layers of anthropogenic self-cherishing, the most profound change of consciousness begins to take place. Your humanness is recognized as merely being the stage of your existence. There's not indication for all life. We have a level of our being that more moth, rust, nuclear holocaust, or destruction of the rainforest, genes will not corrupt from this point of view. The threat of extinction of appears the implication to change to evolve the permutation. It strikes the question of the link debate. We'll isolate our links here. It's first defining the consequences of the environmental destruction only in terms of humanity normalizes violence against the non-human body. Every scenario for how warming kills us listed in the 1AC, disease, migration, conflict, agriculture are all reference for human sides. The equivalent of reading cards that reference only a certain race is being affected by war. It normalizes the constant violence that happening inside humans. Second, the plan is built on the backs of sending non-humans away. Sending diplomats on planes creates an anthropocenic process that blinds yourselves to its consequences. To get the raw materials to build a plane or a car, you extract the metal from ancestral habitats of different life forms. You travel to a building built from a storm query that extracted from the backs of insects and other life forms. They're advocating this without a second thought. Envelops us within the norm of anthropocentrism. Third, attempting to prevent assumptions that humans should be saved, which creates a distinction between the human good life and the non-human bare life, in which the non-human can be eliminated capriciously or just for our mere benefit. The contrary or evidence say that humans are not benign. The history of colonialism proves we have to question the notion of survival and our ethical considerations. The permutation itself is subsequently impossible. It severs the anthropocenic framing in the discourse of the 1AC. If you and our framing arguments are links of disheads to that, and you wouldn't evaluate the permutation, and rejecting anthrop comes first. The only way we can get to an coordinated literature and permutation contains the human political technology which erects to perform social domination. If they claim to reform practice, they only recreate insidious new ones. 097, shallow environmentalism seeks only to reform certain socio-economic practices without altering modernity's anthropogenic energy towards some technological modernity, promote biosphere catastrophe to our the planet minority of private ratification. Also, the permutation wouldn't involve could later now. They say now the critique itself is necessary to solve anthropocentrism. So group the next two arguments: necessary to solve environmental degradation, economic exploitation, ongoing colonialism, result of 1AC ethics. Genocide creates the conditions for all forms of social domination that create, destroy life on Earth. Don't wait their impacts. Their concern for life is marked by a hierarchy of value in which non-human animal life is violently used as the raw material for the destruction of other forms of life. They say that. Lincoln truth and truth to the F, that's the answer to the above. They say that the F espouses ecological stewardship. This is basically saying that we have a white man's burden for the environment. The reason we destroy the environment is because animals, non-human entities are seen as expendable items to use. When you view an entity that is essentially a currency that can be traded, you're not able to provide the care or connectedness that causes us to cherish the things we love. The fossil fuels will be replaced by other ways of extracting resources that fuel other ways for the environment. Species will still be trashed for clothing and food, and the idea that we solve a problem like warning will justify and provide free rein to continue these threats at a higher level. They say humans destroy the environment, but the environment is always is going to find a new way of balance. Lots of species will be able to survive. They haven't isolated a way that warming destroys everything. There's things at the bottom of the ocean that could create new types of sentient species like costing ordinary evidence to that the imagining of human extinction allows the flourishing and creation of new life. Even if we have lots of bad shit, they haven't hereded away that everything, including the cockroaches and the bacteria and the microbes and the cyclones, other things that are possibility of value would be important. They say that preventing human extinction necessary into an ecocentric framework. This bomb card says that we should colonize space, and that's why humans are super important. First of all, if there's nothing that can survive on Earth without humans, no reason we have to go for space. And the desire to explore space is rooted in anthropocentrism, positatorism, expose resources, spread the ideology of human-centered values. It only means we destroy other worlds. Monbiot in 10 governments can be success seeks failed by how well they make money go around. The aim in order to set the systems packed up and sold to us as a form of anti-consumption, consumption, and posters express this idea of future for time to get off tiny little world out to where the universe takes the resources off the planet to be, so be it. However you use them, we utilize the energy of the sun and mineral wealth of this world. Either we do not become to expand and explore other worlds, we become something greater than a mud-grubbing, sentient animal. We die as a species. The idea appears we might hop from one planet to another, consuming the resources. Moving on is considered by these people, and space colonization is bad. Seriously, we've already fucked one planet up, catching ordinate by culling the imagination of a new world or a better place of production and harnessing new technologies. Humans have for a long time left old habitats and created a home for others. The history of species is marked by population movement and by technological innovation. What is an issue is failure to reflect upon the relationship between environmental destruction and scientific faith, power, technology, attitude, species system. How he suggests the colonies of the planet side little to address the central problem of human action, destroy our habitat and Earth. Colonization of other planets would in no way solve the problem of environmental destruction. Rather, it would merely introduce the destruction of the planet habitat, and we should not really naively endorse the future destruction of others. They say reverence for human life comes first. This is dumb. I've explained this argument above. If we're so much smarter than everybody, we should be able to realize that their suffering is more. There's much more suffering than humans because there's only 6 billion humans, or as there are countless trillions or quadrillions of other life forms, especially if you expand into an abiotic understanding of life and its immoral side, control extinction, relevant and impact comparison, because the universe will have value affect humanity. 99 other planetary Earth whole system 2 may eventually be humanized, given the technological possibility of doing so. Environmental philosophy must not be merely bounded, but astronomically bounded. While there's still pristine nature left on Earth, there's not be nature pristine elsewhere on the planet. We should be off the wall of quantum of life on them necessarily run through them of infinite value tests. We have suffered failed to recognize the nature of bodies as no fundamental ontological value. It's not true that nature devotes both human consciousness not generate the primary ontological value of independent nature. Nature's form process is finding this value whether or not humankind is run, and they have no unique offense. Extinction is inevitable. New colliders are coming online soon. CS Monitor 3 can make black hole by pushing a huge amount of energy to tiny value. The obvious switch particles accelerated scientists are becoming increasingly confident they'll be able to create new black holes in the next 5 years, and that destroys the universe. Wired 3 Reese has revived the idea that high energy physics connects to the destroy the world. Ever more powerful accelerators might create a strangeness of ultra quarks that serve the ice knife for the entire universe, destroying all matter to duration just for the maybe no reason why they can spontaneously return nothing, and just destroying humanity now is critical to prevent a boom in nanotech, CR, and 4th technology manufacturing will arrive suddenly in the next 10 years, almost certainly in the next 20 now, system placing really effectively, and that destroys life throughout the universe. ETC and 3 if nanobots start building chairs, no stop the self-replicating processes will go haywire into the entire world, and the nanobots are very first iteration of life. If the first replicator could have some copy replicators could then build 2 more, like 10,000 seconds, 4 more, build another 4th, the instant hours, 8 billion, another 4 years, if somebody exceed the mass of the sun, all plants combined, and new military technology will create lasers that exceed comets of big energy. Leslie 96, the most powerful, the hard X-ray lasers, President Reagan's SDI, they are 100,000 joules. The SDI lasers would be favorite for generating single pulses. Could lasers be used to exceed common grade collision policies? Laser pulses sold energy spread over period, much greater than collision between various radius. The internet pulses could help compensate. So, the technologies for generating higher harmonic increases by over 100 times can be had until laser beams, control electrons from atoms that made them spring back with them, to radiate. That serves the vacuum. Leslie 96, extremely fast particles which have the most kinetic energy. Rifle bullets revolve locally energetic confirmation collision energies unexpected, and nothing disastrous can be expected at any higher energies. My post-starter vacuum that destroys the universe. Leslie 96, the vacuum state we live in the absolute lowest one fields won't be at their lowest energies, the ones to which they would like to fall. It would follow the vacuum time and disappear as bubbles were like in form. The bubble would expand and close to the light with enormous energy release. They could be able to make electrical catastrophe, potential decay as soon as they are by the advancing bubble wall, and death doesn't exist. Everything's occurring in consciousness before ethical connection to the world around us. Lanta in 1126. There's more than the sum of our biological will function life consciousness, your body of light, understanding the universe by centers of the world's all the way to our consciousness relates to physical process. We're taught. Actually, we're gonna scratch that card. Just read another one of these cards. F commits the biological fallacy by equating organisms to life. Everything is alive, and none attempts to distinguish between life and non-life cause ecosystem destruction and extinction. Grow in 96. Organisms can be alive and dead. The next, no quantitative difference. Life, no quantitative organization. Organisms exhibit all life is only in the context of select supporting systems. Only a tree trunk, cannibal layer is alive. While its support system is dead. Separation of living organisms from the supported but dead environment's reduction is conventionally ecologically disproved. Both inorganic and organic are functional parts of developing ecosystems. The biological fallacy equating organisms with life is the result of the faulty antithesis foods on planet Earth taken from the ash and avoid the organism viewed life. Then I think that's are important also to important we demean life by equating life organisms.
I have a couple of questions really quickly. Why is the Center for Responsible Nanotechnology a good source to report on the U.S. creating nano bombs that will destroy the universe?
That's not the card that says that.
Your piece of evidence, that's a piece of evidence that says we're going to develop.
It's not the card. Yeah, that's the developing card. Well, yeah, the Center for Responsible Nanotechnology would know about nanotechnology more than like other sources because they're involved in the industry. Okay. That's not the card that says nanotech is bad. That's the card that says that nanotech is coming now.
Why is the Action Group on Erosion, which is a political advocacy group, qualified to make that claim?
You're right. They are
They're
a
not.
lab-based group, but they have some qualifications and insider
You
knowledge
didn't
that's...
write any down, so what do you think they are?
Well, let's see. This web paper looks it's kind of cool. etcgroup.org.
I'm not waiting for you to look it up.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I have to look it up. I don't know off the top of my head, you're right.
Okay. So I guess I sort of understand your claim that everything is alive, but if everything's alive, then what sort of violence can we commit towards something? Like, what is
Well,
violence?
a good example is the destruction of the universe. If things don't exist because the protons that allow those things to have any form of organization.
So what is
there's no way to
existence?
form
What does it
value
mean for
within
something
that.
to exist or be animate?
Well, which question? Exists or be animate? I guess our argument is that the distinction between the two isn't there. To exist means to be there, to have some form of, I don't know, existence. You're right, it's tautological, but it's,
Well,
yeah, it's existence.
if that's the case, then why are things being why does being have any value to it?
Well, because it's the foundation of all value, you can't have value without existence. So the capacity to have value, or to make anything good or bad, the capacity to assign a normative value requires the existence of that entity to begin
Okay,
with.
so in
it's
order
a
for
fundamental starting point.
me as a person to assign a normative value to something, I have to be alive, correct?
No,
Yeah.
not necessarily, because
I can
well,
assign values
the
to
raw
something
evidence,
while
the raw
dead.
evidence says that
You're
creates.
saying stop. I can assign
The answer to the
values.
question is no.
Okay, right. Now say what you're gonna say. So
The
no,
raw
I
evidence
can't.
says
Okay.
that the biological fallacy assumes that the only way to assign value to things is to be alive to do so. That's privileged from our vantage point of being alive, specifically being alive as humans, and forecloses the possibility of other things existing or coming to terms with being aware of existence.
Well,
For example,
I don't understand your point. It seems like you're saying everything getting killed is bad. And my confusion is, isn't it to some degree inevitable that people, in order to value things, have to value their own existence first? Like an individual person.
No.
Don't they have to?
yeah, the Cauchy
No.
Orton evidence say that imagining global suicide is a responsible position.
That's
in
not
light of the
actual
harm that we
suicide
inflict
though.
on
That's
others.
not actual suicide though.
Well, the Cauchy and Orton evidence say that it could actually be suicide. The real evidence certainly goes that far. It says that humans are not good for the rest of the world
So how do those
because
human
we
values
destroy things.
how do those human values exist if they're all dead?
Right, human values don't exist, which is why we should look at the world from that's time of the way. But we should look at the world from the perspective of a mountain, more broad, long-term thing that acknowledges the suffering of things that aren't us.